there's a lot of belief and argument in music cultural history that tour, regardless of the cultural impact of the Sex Pistols tour on music in general.
You're listening to Building Dallas by Arrington Roofing.
I felt like even then you could feel the soul of the building, and I don't want to get like too spiritual or metaphysical or whatever about it, but the building like that has a soul, it has a spirit to it.
From sunrise commutes to stormy nights, from tough builds to big ideas, we're shaping the future of North Texas, one story at a time. Welcome to Building Dallas.
Today on Building Dallas, we're thrilled to welcome Diana Cox, a powerhouse behind one of Texas's most legendary venues, the Longhorn Ballroom, also the Kessler. As Vice President of Kessler Presents, Diana is leading the charge to revive the historic Dallas landmark just in time for its 75th anniversary. Originally built for Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys, the Longhorn has hosted icons like B.B. King, Selena, George Jones, and Ray Charles, and now is entering a bold new chapter. But Diana's story goes far beyond the stage. She holds a master's degree in political science and served as an officer in the Texas Army National Guard and has taught Texas government at the college level. And today she is preserving Dallas's culture while shaping its future. Diana, welcome to Building Dallas.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Glad for you to be here.
Yeah.
Okay, Diana, let's just start with, and what I was asking you about before, day in the life of Diana Cox at Kessler Presents.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah, it's always the super exciting how many emails are in your inbox kind of a day to start. But also, we remind ourselves in our office sometimes that, it's work, but it's, quote, fun work most of the time. Signing contracts, yeah, not exciting, but looking forward at what the next shows are, looking at marketing strategies that marketing team's putting out, the super exciting HR side of things. But also, it's just overarching what the venue is doing next and looking at that path always.
Got it. Okay. When you walk into the Longhorn Ballroom, what does it say to you? What do you feel like when you're at the Longhorn?
So I'm going to take back a little bit to when we first took over the property, and it had been abandoned. The property had gone into foreclosure. It had been, auctioned.
It was just vacant.
It was vacant for a couple of years in an industrial area,
right?
Which I think anybody can imagine the type of condition a building, an old building especially, would be in at that time. I
actually went over there with Edwin.
Oh, yeah.
Way early.
So you know.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, it was dark.
And I hate to laugh, but, it felt like you would, that building it's a very long building if you have not been into the ballroom before. And you would turn on your cell phone flashlight and it just went into the abyss. You could see nothing.
Who's back there?
But still, even then, if you got the doors open, even in this damaged property that had been, hadn't seen people in a couple of years, and you could stand in there and you would sit and kind of take it in. And I felt like even then you could feel the soul of the building. And I don't want to get too spiritual or metaphysical or whatever about it, but the building like that has a soul, it has a spirit to it. And I think you felt that from the time from when it was empty and dusty and probably just had a raccoon hanging out, to maybe one, maybe more, who knows, to now where we've been able to bring it back to life. And I think that spirit doesn't go away.
And you probably had never been there before.
I went once. I went to one show there in around 2008. The old 97s did a New Year's Eve show there.
Wow.
So I'd gotten to go to one. And the ownership at that time, it was the Ramirez family, and they had operated it for many, many years, and they through the 90s and into the 2000s. And they weren't doing concerts regularly. It was not set up for that. I would not say anything negative about them. I'm just going to say that it was probably not the most. They were not most prepared for that concert.
That that is like you said, a substantial piece of property to keep up, and that's it costs a lot just to keep a big building up.
It does. I mean, we look at that on a day-to-day. We've got a small team of folks that we call them our wranglers. They're of folks that are on the team on regular basis, and it's not like, oh, we can have someone do maintenance once a week. No, we've got a small team there regularly, just like making sure the door stops are not, are screwed in properly, and making sure the weeds aren't coming up through where they're not supposed to. Like from one extreme to the other. And some of those sound like trivial things, but some of them are appearance and some of them are fire code. Those matter, You
don't want the city on your back.
No. So we have to, but on a property of that size, I mean, you've got the ballroom itself, obviously, which was the primary focus and what's most well known. But the property is way more expansive than that. It has the mixed use building that's, and then the back parking and side parking areas.
Okay, so I want to go to just telling us, for people who don't know, younger people,
sure,
and because when you're talking about the soul of the building, a lot of people my age, 68, they do have. Memories. They walk in there and they see when I was there, when this act was there, when I saw this group. But for younger and people that are new to the area, what was the Longhorn? What?
Sure. Yeah.
How did it get, the start, and what was it? Yeah,
the brief history of it, and there's a lot, a million stories, which is a great thing. We laugh a little bit. I don't want to sidebar too far, but we have the Kessler Theater, which was a historic movie house converted into a listening room. We have a Heights Theater in Houston, historic movie house converted into a listening room.
Wait. Okay.
What's unique about a
listening room?
Yes, that's what we call it. That's what we call our venue style for those venues.
But for concerts,
not the Longhorn. Yes.
Okay.
But the Longhorn has been a music venue since it opened in 1950. And 1950. So its whole legacy...
When it started. That's when it was built. Okay.
Its whole legacy is being a music venue. It's been described as Texas' most historic venue. But it was opened in 1950 as Bob Wills Ranch House. O.L. Nelms was the developer. He was known for other spots in Dallas like Yellow Belly Drag Strip. So he created that for because he wanted Bob Wills to play more. Bob Wills is the king of Western swing.
Yes.
And he wanted him to play more. Not to denigrate in any way Bob Wills or his legacy. Like a lot of musicians, business was not his forte.
Yeah.
So it did not stay as Bob Wills Ranch House, particularly like with him involved particularly long. So in the 50s, it started transitioning away from that. Jack Ruby operated it for a while. That Jack Ruby was one of the operators. We have the lease. We have the lease. I copied the lease of his operations of it. Yeah.
Wow. I had no idea.
Yeah. And so, and what was interesting was in the 50s, it's in what's called the Cedars now, is the neighborhood that the Longhorn Ballroom technically sits in. Right. It is on what is called Rock Island. It's kind of divided by the Trinity on both sides, an old tributary on one side, kind of, sort of, and then where the Army Corps of Engineers put the Trinity, right? So it's on Rock Island. There's small cultural references to that throughout history with the train line and all that, but was unincorporated for a period in the 50s and 60s. Which means that they were not...
That close to Dallas?
That close to downtown.
And it was unincorporated?
Yes. So they were not beholden to some of the rules that other parts of the city might be, like segregation and things like that. So what they were seeing at that time were... Like Nat King Cole played there in 1954. We have a photo of him performing to an African-American audience seated with a white audience standing in the back. Is one of the photos we have displayed in there, because they were able to do... I was kind of knowing it was kind of whatever they wanted. There weren't a lot of rules there. So Jack Ruby was he was whatever you might think of him. He was a businessman, and he was going to do what was going to make money. And at that time, that he was going to book the artists that sold tickets to whoever wanted to buy tickets. And that's how he operated. Now, there were times where the building was separated into the Guthrie Club, which was one part of it. And then the ballroom was a separate. So it's kind of gone through some crazy iterations.
Okay, and Guthrie, where does that come
That
from?
was the name of part of the that's what they called part of the venue to differentiate, especially when they were doing some of the desegregated kind of shows.
Okay.
And segregated shows sometimes,
Yeah.
unfortunately, too. So, but that was, that leads into a lot of the era where the Groom family took over the property. And that's Dewey Groom operated the venue for he's got the longest legacy of it, him and his family and his sons.
Okay.
And that's when it became the Longhorn Ballroom. We got the signage. That's when that marquee comes into play that most people know so well.
Okay, now wait a second. So right off the bat, it wasn't the Longhorn Ballroom. It was
Bob Wills Ranch House.
Ranch House. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
But the Longhorn, I mean, I didn't know about Bob Wills' name. I mean, I knew him playing there.
Yeah.
But okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So really name number 2.
it is, yeah,
what
the one
stuck.
that stuck, yeah. So it's a fascinating timeline, and then that's where you got every country artist who's anybody played there pretty much in the 60s and 70s, especially. You had, we got Clean Cut Willie and long haired Willie Nelson.
Yeah.
We got both eras in there of him playing.
But was it really strictly country?
In the 60s, it was mostly country, but there was a lot of the soul and blues coming through. That's what you were getting some of there too. So, there's the stories getting in, 60s and 70s of, Bobby Blue Bland playing there and Mick Jagger coming over to watch him. So, you get those components of the timeline for sure. It wasn't strictly country, but it was country, and then some of your R&B soul history was huge there for Dallas.
Okay. Yeah.
And then in the 70s, we started leaning a little into the rock and roll. That doesn't mean we stopped doing soul or R&B or country, but we hit some of the rock and roll. Iconically, in 1978 was when the Sex Pistols did their, at that time, first U.S. tour, and they intentionally booked at places where it might have a little bit of contention. And Longhorn Ballroom was one of the few locations that they performed on that tour. And there's a famous photo of the marquee where it says, "Tonight, Sex Pistols, January 19th, Merle Haggard." And that was in January of 1978 because they were not the same night. Some people mix that up. It was different nights. However, it was in the same couple days or so. And so that, that contrast just kind of blew people's minds. And, there's great stories. There's, I know people that were at that show and tell crazy stories from it. And, we have some amazing photography on display at the venue of that show.
That's what I love about what y'all did down there, is preserving a lot of history.
For sure.
Yeah, if you have not been to the venue, whoever's playing, you got to see all the things that they've got in cases.
Yeah.
And now, when the Sex Pistols played, I was way out in Lubbock in college.
Yeah.
So, and I always hear about that, but was it just because it was them, or was there something that went on at the concert?
Well, the concert happened, and it was partially because of them, and the local band Nerve Breakers that a lot of people loved actually opened. And there's a lot of belief and argument in music cultural history that tour, regardless of the cultural impact of the Sex Pistols tour on music in general, and that doesn't mean there weren't punk bands or better punk bands before or after or anything else. They just deeply impacted the trajectory of rock music in not just the UK but internationally in America as well.
Right.
So it gets a lot of attention for that reason, and it was just, it was a spectacle. So how could it not?
Yeah.
But it was pretty, some of the stories are pretty fun and interesting. And then I've got, then you go into the 80s, I've got friends telling me they saw Motorhead and the Ramones within a couple weeks of each other at the Longhorn Ballroom. Johnny Cash played there in the 80s. You've got all kinds of stories of people. We've got Selena in the 90s. We've got, Aerosmith recorded a video there at one point. Red Hot Chili Peppers
Really?
played there. Oingo Boingo played there. In addition to all of your, La Mafia, all these other like Latin and country acts that were still touring and coming through. So it's just like it just doesn't like taper off, it still continued to have that until I'd say they stopped doing as many concerts in the late 90s into the 2000s. And then in the teens, they were, it was tried to kind of make a comeback, and now we've been operating. We reopened in 23.
Well, okay, so that makes me think. So when it started slowing down, was it that the artist wanted a different kind of venue, or what?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into that. I think, we as a organization, we really focus on, are we venue operators? Yes. We're also promoters, and that means that we are looking at a lot strategic bookings of artists.
Yeah.
And what that looks like, it's what does that mean, and what's coming into town, what's touring, how does that work? And I think that there's been different eras and different venues in our city that have been able to serve those purposes, and also just depends what the people managing the property are focused on at that time.
Yeah.
Raul Ramirez operated a restaurant that was very popular for a very long time at that mixed-use building on the premises.
Okay.
And so that, that's something that was a focus for the business model there.
And I don't know, just for the music scene.
Yeah.
In the 2000s, was Dallas building a lot more venues?
I wouldn't say a lot more. I think we had a little bit of a shift in the Dallas music scene in the 2000s. We went from very, for me, I was going to small clubs and hanging out at small clubs. That was my preference. I spent a lot of time in my life in Deep Ellum, so that's
even smaller.
Yeah, super small.
Because when you think about how big the ballroom is, it's, but yet where it is,
right?
You think, no, there can't be anything down there in the creek.
What's happening?
Yeah. So,
yeah. So I think it just depends on the, your perspective and your taste. I think there's always a scene. There's always going to be a venue for something. I think it just depends on what the focus is at that time. And I think at this time now, there's a really big opportunity for people to be music consumers in different rooms. And being in a room that has a ton of history is a cool opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. So, talk a little bit about the transition from when Edwin found the building, because I've talked to him a little bit about this, and as far as building Dallas.
Sure.
Kind of raising money for it.
Oh yeah.
Getting probably permits and getting approval, because you got to get approval from everybody nowadays to do stuff. Walk us through a little bit of kind of the nuts and bolts of how you get something that's really kind of seemed like time passed it. It's
right.
Kind of left, and how do you bring that back?
It is,
how
it's
did you
challenging.
guys bring it back?
Yeah, no, it's a challenge. I think, you get a lot of people in your corner when you are preserving history in Dallas, believe it or not, because I don't think Dallas has the best reputation for preserving history all the time.
You're right.
And so when you've got, Preservation Dallas put Longhorn Ballroom on its most endangered list several years ago.
Okay.
So that's not saying that was an impetus for anything to occur, but it definitely draws attention to it. Yeah. And so when we took it on, and you've got neighbors that have long established businesses down there, some industrial, some a little bit, not as much, but you've got businesses that have been operating for a very long time in that vicinity. They might not want that to get raised and turn into a high rise, which is always a possibility.
Right.
So if you can, now, despite, I know there's property value conversations in that, and I don't want to knock anybody's business model, but when you can probably get a lot more people on your side when you say, I'm going to preserve this, reopen it, and make it an attraction, as opposed to tear it down and put another cookie cutter piece on top of it.
Well, and this goes back to what we were talking about before on one of our previous podcasts, looking at landscape architecture, how it draws people together. I think this would be a great podcast for people to really think about after they've watched it, about venues like the Longhorn, about parks, about things that, this may not be the highest and best use, but it is. When you start putting everything at highest and best use, it becomes sterile and not really human.
Well, and I think we're able to do a lot with it. Like, look, we're going to do a corporate event, and you can rent out that venue, and we can do your gala or corporate event or whatever you want. But we're also going to put on a concert that we believe in, and then on top of that, we've got a mixed use building that's going to have tenants renting out offices, restaurant, whatever, a variety of things.
Which is the building just right on the other side of the parking lot, same property, but yeah.
And then we're also adding an amphitheater in the back. So there's going to be a live music component, outdoor live music component.
I didn't know that.
You can talk about your landscape architects involved. There we go. And so we're now adding a feature that there isn't a private outdoor amphitheater in Dallas proper right now. So, you can talk about I'm not saying
now,
they don't, at the size we're going to build. This does not exist. We built a stage out back, and it's going to be opening in fall of 2025.
Okay. But this isn't anything that was there before that you've read. This is a new idea.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah. So it kind of brings a little bit of both. It's using the property, so that back lot is our parking lot when we need it to be a parking lot, and that's going to be an amphitheater hangout. That's where people are going to sit and watch a band other times.
Yeah.
So it's a good use of that land, and also adding another opportunity for usage of the property, for booking, for gathering people, and for amplifying the city and drawing things to the city as well.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of overarching.
So back to kind of up on a fun part there. I love that.
Yeah.
But
we're
bringing that thing back.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's it was a lot of looking at the zoning of the premises. So we got to have some fun, go to those fun zoning meetings, and then there was an economic development component as well with the city to that's not the best intersection in Dallas at Corinth and Riverfront. Let's be honest, right? It is it's under construction, and it's going to be under more construction, but it's it's a challenging portion, and you're going into an industrial area that we're trying to activate more. And so I think that you have to have partners not only on the private in your neighborhood there, but also that are supporting what you're doing, right? You never want to make the neighbors mad. That's number one. But also to have the city partner to be like, hey guys, if you want us to be able to be successful in activating this location, we need the city to buy in on this with us to be able to make it accessible and safe, and for people to drive and park and walk around there. So, so that was a huge component of it. And then,
but you got the city on your side.
We do.
They were,
absolutely.
Was it tough too, or did they see the benefit right off the bat?
For the most part, they saw the benefit off the bat. They wanted to hear the story, of course, but we've been really lucky with our having great relationships and understanding from our city council personnel. So that's been really a nice touch. And then phase one was open the Longhorn Ballroom, and we got that done. Phase two is the mixed use, and phase three is the amphitheater. So
I'm sure that it probably helped too that the group you're with already had got the Kessler, right, which was another venue that's got a lot of history. That'd be a whole nother podcast. But so they're not looking at someone that says, "Oh, I think I can do this." You guys had proven yourselves, and from what I understand from Edwin, that might even have been tougher because you're started, because I think that was his first one,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
He's having to prove himself
Yeah.
to the industry and then get bands and get everybody remembering, hey, this is a great little venue. And it is smaller.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, that would be an interesting thing if you wanted to contrast the two of what do you do with the Kessler that you can't do with the Longhorn and vice versa.
Yeah. So you mentioned Edwin Cabanis, the owner and president of the company. He, we opened the Kessler first, and between that and then opening the Heights Theater in Houston, once again, they're both in the.
Are they similar?
They are very similar. They're both in the National Historic Registry. They're both old movie houses, and they are both live music venues now. And having that track record, and the Kessler obviously is, I would argue, very well respected in Dallas. But the Heights Theater is very well respected as well. And I think having it's not like, I did it once. It's, we've done this twice now, where we've taken a historic property, brought it back. We know how to get the right partners. We know how to get the historic designation, because we did get the historic designation for the Longhorn Ballroom last year as well.
So it's kind of safe, right?
It should be.
Yeah.
So we've
That's great to know.
Yes. So all
it's
three
have legs. Yeah.
Yes, and that it gives it a little bit of extra, protection gravitas too. To have that, and there's some very specific things to do to get that. You have to jump through some hoops as well and preserve a lot. But we've been able to do that in multiple venues, and I think that really gives you. And honestly, so the Kessler was built in 1941. The Heights Theater was originally built in 1929, our venue in Houston. So both of them are older technically than the Longhorn Ballroom, but our shows at the Kessler and the Heights Theaters are usually like 400 to 600 people, and then the Longhorn Ballroom we can do over 2,000 people.
Yes.
So it's a little bit different in that. But yeah, there's always kind of the warmth and soul of these historic buildings, but also the fun quirks, as we would call them, historic buildings, of like, they ran the pipe where, and usually it's been fixed, but you're also just like, okay, that was a choice. I don't know. But people patchworked things together when they could at once upon a time. And when these buildings, over eras of trying to keep these buildings operational, and then we've got to sometimes figure out what they did, and it may not always be as documented as we hope, and have to undo it.
Not to get too much into the business of it, but you're mentioning old buildings, and I'm a contractor, and buildings. So that's very interesting, and hopefully to our audience about building Dallas. Did you go over budget?
I'm gonna refrain on that one. I'll say there's always surprises. I mean, I think even in a new build there's surprises. I think in old buildings the surprises are just different.
Oh my gosh! You're talking to the contractors right now are going, oh, amen, sister. You get to start digging into an old building, and sometimes you go, Uncle Joe fixed that. I don't know why he did that.
I think it was sometimes they wouldn't necessarily. Sometimes there wasn't like a clear drawing of where like a drainage pipe went. And
then you don't know where is it,
and so it's an experiment if that fails. So we had that kind of a thing, and we did have that happen, right around when we opened, and it was solved. It was a thing, but like it was one of those things. It was just like, just start digging.
Yeah,
I don't know. Like, what do you do? The snake only goes so far. So hey, it's. I know it's not fun, and it's not the fun side of things, but.
But it's the reality side of it. So let me ask you this, for going to you directly with your experience and your military and in your education. How have you handled this? What was the secret sauce you brought to go? Okay, here's where
I'm a delegator. That's what I am. So I say that joking, but important. Also look, I joke that it's I didn't study this. actually my husband has a degree in project management, but I joke that it's kind of like project management. It's like you delegate, you do this, you go take care of this, you make that call, and everybody report back to one person so everybody knows what everybody's doing. So I kind of think that's kind of what my role usually is in those crises, or I hate to call it, I don't want to say it's a crisis, but in those moments of challenges
of building a building.
But yeah, you try to make sure, you try to keep people in their lane, but also have someone that knows what all the parts and pieces are doing. I think that's the critical thing is while there's things I'm never going to be an expert on, and that's okay. I don't need to be. We've, and there's things that other members of my team are experts on, and that's great. And that's what we do, And
you need them.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I think just knowing what you know and how to knowing just enough to be able to put the parts together. I think that's the critical thing on stuff like this, like I'm not a plumber. I'm not going to be a plumber. I'm not going to be a roofer. That's okay. Those are not things I'm going to do. But if I know I've got a roof leak and I know I've got to talk about replacing or repairing, and I've got a sewage problem, I need to prioritize, okay, what's going to affect my business? What can prevent me from having a show tomorrow night? Because that's revenue. And how am I going to prioritize, and who's going to handle it, and who's going to report back, and what's the timeline? And putting all that together and understanding that, being a chicken with your head cut off doesn't do anybody any good in that world. You've got to sit and draw it all out. Now you can get upset later, but when it's happening, you got to make a plan and execute that plan.
Okay. So when you were growing up, your little girl, did you think, oh yeah, I want to help rebuild an old historic building venue for music?
No.
Or did this sneak up on you and go, ha, I got you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I did what I jokingly call the tour of North Texas colleges after high school. And then Texas Wesleyan, UTA, Tarrant County College, and finished up at UTD. That's a pretty good tour.
Way to go, girl.
So, shoot. That was just for my bachelor.
I love it.
So I did a tour. And then I went and worked, and then I went, was like, oh, this isn't really what I want to do. I went back to school. You mentioned I went back for my master's, and while I was in grad school, I took a leave of absence to join the military because why not? Your 20s are for figuring things out, right? So,
yes.
So I did, so
you weren't afraid of things. I'm getting this about you, Diana. You're one that somebody dives in. The person who you go, well, I just delegate. Oh my gosh. Everybody who's run a project went, no, if there's not a delegator person there, this thing is going to be a nightmare.
Yes.
So I really have got a special appreciation for you now, especially with knowing what it takes to develop a, if you haven't been to the Longhorn, I hate to be this so much, but y'all, you got to go. It's fabulous. And to know the person that, might not have dug the ditch, but went, I got to make sure the ditch guy doesn't mess up the electrical guy, that doesn't mess up the framing guy.
And we have some really great, I don't take the lead on all the construction. I know Edwin does take the lead on most of the construction, but I do look at the ops once we get further along. So I will give him that. I when it's full construction mode, sometimes I'm like, I salute you and I step back. But, I just happened to be doing some event coordination work freelance while I was teaching some classes, and that's how I ended up doing some events at the Kessler, and here I am. So, 12 plus years later. So,
but it really sounds like you really found a good fit. Right?
I think so. So I've been a music fan. I started going to concerts in Deep Ellum at 16.
Well, and you told me you're a performer too.
I've been in bands myself, and I am. I consider myself a consumer of music. I love live music. It's a huge part of my life. And so I think getting to, enjoy the business side and seeing what we can do with these venues, and then also enjoy the music side too is so cool. You talk about the ballroom in addition, I'm obviously being kind of like a teaching and history and all that stuff with these buildings. At the Longhorn, we have a really cool display. We call it it's the gallery area, and it's
fabulous.
Memorabilia.
It really is. I think I've told Edwin this because we had North Texas Roofing Association had our annual banquet there.
Yes.
And it was so fun for me to see because I had already been to some concerts there.
Yeah.
To see everybody looking. I mean, when you see people standing in front of all these
installations as well.
The installations, and I mean standing there for. They're reading everything. They're like they can't take their eyes off it for a while because you've got guitars and clothes and boots and and then the pictures and then some of the written history of those things.
Yeah.
Especially, I'm sure some people were looking at. I was there.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. No, I think that, that piece of it, being able to tell the story you're reinforcing it to the people that remember being there, but then for your people that are out of town or your people that are new to Dallas or maybe younger generations that didn't get to go to the ballroom ever or not be familiar with its history or its impact on the music scene or culture of Dallas, I think that that's, we say all the time, our whole organization, we are a steward of the Longhorn Ballroom, and I love that, and because it was here before all of us, and hopefully it'll be here long after all of us, and so we're trying to carry its legacy into the future and grow on that, and being able to do that, but tell the story is just really cool. I don't know, like. I like watching, like you talk about seeing people look at it. What I love to do is I like to watch and see what installations get people's attention. Yeah. And I'm like, it's always kind of neat because you're like, are they going to stop at B.B. King? Or are they going to stop at Tammy Wynette? Or is it going to be, something else? And I think that getting to watch that is just, I don't know, it just adds an interesting piece to it.
Well, and the fun part of it is when you think of the Longhorn Ballroom, you think it's going to be all country.
Yep.
And no, it has the Sex Pistols thing there. It has rock and roll and it has the blues. And you can just hit so many types of music and so many people. And you were mentioning people coming into town, seeing that as an attraction, want to go see and go, oh, this is where that happened.
Well,
and there's a lot of those stories.
There are. And I try to think about, it's hard to, and don't want to make it a tourism conversation, but, we think about what we go look at in other cities. Like if you go to another city, would something like this be an attraction to you? And we have to I try to remind myself every once in a while to let myself be a tourist in my own city, because we have cool stuff here. We have cool buildings.
We take it for granted.
We do, and the parks and the art installations in Dallas that are just public, that we could just walk past in downtown or whatever. I think I think it's a good reminder when we think about these things to not take them for granted.
Yep. So, looking at the history, now, where do I get to go on this 75 Jubilee? What are we? Because we don't want to do something and have this get dated. But anyway.
Well, because the building or the venue opened in 1950, so 2025 is the 75th anniversary of the Longhorn Ballroom, and we're celebrating it all year because we think it deserves a celebration all year.
Yes.
And so we're having a series of events called Jubilees, and they are different shows that feature a larger number of bands than we would do. It's more of like a day. It gets almost like a day party or a little mini activation vibe to it.
Yeah, you just had one.
We did.
Because I wasn't here. Yeah. And it was
the first one was
almost all day.
It was. The first one was on Texas Independence Day. And we had, Bob Wills' Texas Playboys, current iteration, came and played. Bob Wills is obviously the iteration of that band. The Band of Heathens. We had a Pachuco Boogie sound system DJing, and then the Toadies and the Polyphonic Spree performed as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a lot of great Texas acts on that. And then, we'll have one that leans a little bit more soul R&B, one that leans a little more alt country.
Okay, so there's some more of those.
Oh, yeah.
Some more of those coming. Okay,
Absolutely.
so this will be,
And then
when you
we'll
see
get-
this in 2026, sorry,
You
you
missed
didn't
it.
go, you missed it.
But there'll be other great concerts, so it's okay.
Yes, keep going.
So yeah, no, we're enjoying doing these for sure. It's fun to share a bigger part of the space and with everybody.
Okay, so now I'm gonna broaden out here a little bit.
Yeah.
Diana, give us a little insight into what you guys see as the Dallas music scene in the next 5 or 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
What's Dallas? I mean, you guys are a big part of it, but what's Dallas doing?
I think Dallas has a really strong music scene, and it's kind of coalescing around a few things right now, which is really good. What this means, and I'll be candid, I think that it does feed into, I'll tie it into your buildings because, buildings and operations in Dallas, because if people are leaving their house to go out to something, they are going to a venue, which could be a historic venue or a new venue, but we have a really strong artist central in Dallas and Dallas-Fort Worth to be, we're a bigger
Right, the
metropolitan
whole-
area.
Oh gosh, go up to Denton.
All the way
I
up to
mean,
Denton.
good grief.
And Dallas-Fort Worth has always had a strong music scene. I think it's exceptionally strong right now because we've coming out of these last few years have seen musicians networking together more and finding ways in organizations to help them network more so that they can support each other and do more things together. Mm-hmm. So I think that comes in the form of self-producing an awards program to building continuing education programs and seminars for artists. That's all fine and important with the business side, but I think we're creating we have a lot of good creators right now. We're creating, and I don't want to take that from any artists. They're creating themselves, but they are doing a lot right now. And the Dallas-Fort Worth area has a lot of venues, which gives artists an opportunity to play. We've got recording studios, gives them an opportunity to record. We've got 2 airports, gives them an opportunity to travel, and a lot of highways to travel from.
Yes.
So geographically and strategically, I think Dallas-Fort Worth is a great place for the music scene. We've got, venues that can take an artist from an open mic night at a coffee shop up to headlining a multi-thousand person room. And what we do as our venues is we've got artists that we want them to open on the Kessler stage, then headline the Kessler stage, then open at the Longhorn Ballroom and headline there, and then go play that amphitheater when we get it open.
And on people who just want to support music.
Yeah.
Besides buying a ticket, what avenues are there for people? And this might be more the philanthropic people, or but even kind of the everyday person.
Yeah.
What helps the art? Because really, what helps the artist and the venues so that they thrive? Because everything that I think is good about the North Texas and Dallas and Fort Worth still takes work to keep going. And you don't want, for some reason, Longhorn Ballroom went down, then had to be brought back up.
Yeah.
How can we kind of keep things
Well,
strong?
I think being, if you are someone that has an organization that maybe has a bigger event or some larger funds or things like that, I think, think about a music venue for a private event of some kind. I think that kind of thing is an interesting way. If you want to have a unique event of some kind, you can rent a music venue instead of maybe something that's a little bit more traditional. I think that's
Right.
one thing to keep in mind, like you all have done. So
Yes.
there you go. That's one. I think on the other side for artists, on the artist side, other than buying concert tickets, buying their merchandise is the best way to support a performing artist. Just so you all know, scream
I'm
them all
sure
day
they
and
do
talk
de-
about it, but that's a very complicated pay system, and that's a whole other beast for a different day.
I mean, I don't think we're saying anything new when you say
No.
it is tough to be a musician.
It is.
I look at artwork. I know I was an architect for a
Yeah.
while, and when you start looking at, and actually I'm in a pottery class right now.
Ooh.
Boy, is this off the subject.
That's cool.
But I look at how much time it spent for me to make this little
my gosh.
stupid little cup that's
Right?
not even round hardly, and I think I could go buy this for $12 somewhere. Somebody had to make this,
Yeah.
turn it, glaze it, fire it, do all this
Yeah.
stuff. And when you think about music, you go for they play a 1 or 2 hour set, and you think, well, that was good. Oh my gosh, they've spent their life
Building that.
writing,
Yeah.
rehearsing, perfecting that music. With
Writing-
the value you get
writing
from
the
music,
set list, the order of songs. Like that's a science in itself, like to it.
it is. Yeah. Well, and there's some of the dance groups out there. I go, okay, your next set list for me, cut 2 songs down. I need a slow one here. But yeah, the value. I mean, I would just say this just to support our music industry is support artists.
Yes,
because
agree.
the value you get, you really can't put a price on it, and
No.
the way it makes you feel. We all know what music does to us. I mean, it takes us back to places. It takes us to places you just go emotionally.
Yeah. I also say it's a uniter. I think that no matter what, and that's really important to me as a community and in people in general. I think that, what really blew me away the first time I went to a concert in my life, and then continues to today when I see live music, so decades now, is the shared experience of consuming live music. And I don't want to make it about consuming it, but when you go to a concert of any kind, and you look around, there's people around you, that is a shared experience that cannot be replicated. That moment will never happen exactly again as it happened in that moment, because the speaker or the whatever, the bass note and the vocalist and the person sitting next to you, all of that will never happen again. That is a magical moment that we can share with each other. And to be able to do that in any shared space, that's why, you talk about house to support. I'm like, buy a ticket. Don't say don't buy a ticket. Buy a ticket. But
Get
it's an
out of your
experience. Buy
house.
tickets as gifts. Go to a show. I mean, talk
love
about
that.
concerts to people. I think that there's, just such an experiential part of live music. It's not even just about, not to take away from, it's not just about the artist. It's about your experience of going to an event, of a show. And that's what I think is so cool about this business.
As an artist, both of us.
Yeah.
When we get on stage and the audience is with us,
Yes.
or not with us, oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many concerts, and I'm just in the garage band and we just do cover stuff.
Yeah.
But it is so much fun to keep
Yeah.
doing it. We'll get through with a gig, and when everybody's been with us, we sounded better, our energy was better. So I'm going to say this to the camera: when you're at a concert, give back to the guys that are performing, because it's huge. If you're not a performer and you've got a crowd that is with you, your effort goes up.
It does. And I think, being with the artist can be sitting silently in rapt, attention, or it can be up dancing around, depending on what the show is.
Yes.
But it can be both. It can be either one, depending. But depending on that moment. But I think just giving that attention and I just think the experience, I don't know, in my circles, I don't know a lot of people that are like, I don't like live music. That doesn't really come up in my circles anymore. But, I think that there's a place for everybody to enjoy live music.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that I think it's just important. And I think that it's special.
I think this is the perfect note to wrap up on, is because you said, how did you say it? Connect? What was the word you used? That people connect at concerts, that they're
consuming music together. That's what one of the words I used.
Yeah,
it's a connector. It's a unifier.
Connector. I think that's what I love, that connector. And this is not, I mean, it's a connector, but it's not a connector.
Not the same way.
Guys, get off your phone.
Yeah.
Put it down. Go to a live event and and be a part.
Be
You know what?
engaged.
Maybe that's it, Diana.
Yeah.
It's like the thing that people might be able to take away this spiritually is go to a concert to be a part of it.
Yeah.
You're not just a consumer.
No.
You're there for the people that are there in the audience.
Mm-hmm.
You're there for the talent.
It's an experience, and I think that's just hard to put a value or a rule upon. It's not tangible, and that's what's special about it.
Is there any? I'm going to just put you on the
Yeah.
spot.
Uh-oh.
Is there any story that we can just finish with that you've got of something like that where there was a connection? There was just even your own life and anything that you've done that you just like. I am so thankful that I had that moment, that time, that connection.
Oh,
Whether it was at a concert or whether it's doing your day-to-day work where you're getting all the workers out there and you're being a delegator.
I think I think I don't know. That's on the spot. I don't know. I got nothing right now.
Yeah, it's okay.
Too much.
It's okay.
I just think that sometimes, if you want to add in something, it would be just that I have to remind myself to do it sometimes. But when I'm at a concert of a show, watching a band, I sometimes like to step back and remind myself to look around and watch other people
aware.
enjoy the music and the
Be in
room
it.
and take it in and then go back into it, because it's really easy to I'm going to take a video for my friend or take a picture. Yeah, do that. But then put your phone down and make sure your flash is off when you do it. But put your phone down and then take it in, and you can look at the space, because the space impacts the experience. You can look at the people around you. How are they reacting? And I think I think people feed off of that energy, even from the not just the artist to the audience, but the audience members to each other. I think feed off of that, and I think it just, I don't know. It's it makes it borders on spiritual to me when I'm doing that.
Oh, it is. It when you hit that part inside of you that nobody else can touch.
Yeah.
That because you said it a while back, the bass note and the singer and the beat, and when you put that song together and it really speaks to someone, you can't get that. You can listen to the song again.
Yeah.
But at a live event,
different.
you can't get that. That feeling's there, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
And it's so special. And Diana, I want to leave this podcast with that word connect, because I think that's what we found today is that building Dallas is buildings, it's venues, it's places, it's outdoor places, but without people there connecting, there's no there.
Yeah.
It's producing those places, building those places for us to connect. And I think that is the essence. I think that's the essence of building Dallas, is how do we connect and leave your prejudices aside. And I say that even as audience members, if someone wants to just focus on the music in total quiet and peace, and the guy next to you is dancing his feet off, so be it. That's we've had some gigs where we're like, man, how can we couldn't get more people up dancing? And then we were talking to the audience afterwards. They're like, guys, we were having a blast.
Just watching.
We just wanted to just take it in, and I think that's a truth. Anything you want to
that's good.
add? Is that
That's
a
a
good?
that's a
is
great
that a
ending
good
spot.
closer?
No, it is. It
All
is.
right. Diana, how are you building Dallas, and how is Kessler Presents building Dallas?
Well, I hope that the way I'm contributing in building Dallas is to be presenting these venues in a way that is useful to people and running them in a team that can run them in a way that is beneficial to current and future residents of the city. And personally, I also, hope to continue contributing to the music culture in the city as well. Kessler Presents has created not only the Kessler Theater and the Longhorn Ballroom's legacy, or continued their legacy in Dallas, in a way that makes them, draws people together. It creates a vibrant economic neighborhood for the areas that they sit in. It creates activity. It draws people. It draws ancillary businesses and jobs. And I think that is huge for how we contribute in building Dallas.
Absolutely. And I think in addition to that, I will say this: the uniqueness and the historical significance of both of those properties are really not reproducible because you have to have something that's been there. I mean,
Yes.
I love it that we're building new venues,
For sure.
and you've got to, and we're a growing huge metropolis, but I almost look at what you guys are doing as kind of anchors
Right.
to keep us just from going spastic, and you get to come back to your roots.
Yeah.
And you really get to see stuff that has just a lot of meaning and depth to it. And Diane, I am so glad to have met you today.
Thanks, yeah.
And to get your story and to find out about you and about Longhorn and the Kessler and music and venues in Dallas. And I hope everybody has enjoyed this podcast of Building Dallas. And you guys need to get out of your house, get off your phones, and connect.
Thanks for tuning in to Building Dallas, where we bring the stories that shape North Texas. Subscribe, share, and stay connected. Until next time, keep building. Building Dallas is presented by Arrington Roofing, keeping North Texas covered, rain or shine.